Welcome to Campfire Lore. Here, beneath the stars and beside the fire, we tell stories to guide you gently into rest. Legends from myth and memory, whispered through the ages, retold in soft tones for quiet minds. This space is yours, a quiet corner of the world to breathe, unwind, and drift. Each story is a journey, a path into the misty places between history and dream. And tonight, that path leads north, far north, into a land frozen in time. So settle in. Let the warmth of the fire reach your fingers. Close your eyes, if you'd like, and listen. Tonight, I'll share a story passed through whispers and snow, a tale that drifts between truth and legend. It begins far to the north, where breath turns to frost and the land sleeps under an endless blanket of white. This is Freljord. But Freljord was not always the land of shattered clans and howling storms. Once it was whole, and those who ruled it were sisters. Chapter 1. 3 sisters, 1 crown. The people of Freljord do not speak of summer. Not because they've never seen it, but because summer is a dream that melts too quickly to hold. In the beginning, there was only ice, and the ones who thrived were those who listened to its silence. Among them rose 3 sisters, Avarosa, Cyrilda, and Lysandra. They were not born to rule. They were chosen by the land itself. When their father, the last chieftain of the unified tribes, fell to a fever carried in the belly of a snow bear, the clans looked to the sisters not for power, but for survival. The winters were growing colder, the stars were shifting in strange patterns, and old beasts, the kind sung of in frightened whispers, were moving in the deep. The sisters came together at the peak of Cromdur, a mountain so ancient its summit tore clouds apart. There, under the weeping aurora, they made a pact to share rule over the land, to speak as one voice for all tribes, and to protect the fragile peace that had been so dearly bought with blood. Each sister brought something vital. Avarosa, the youngest, was the heart. She believed in the warmth of hearth fires and the strength of community. She wandered barefoot into the poorest villages, shared food with widows, and learned every dialect spoken under the frost. She did not command loyalty, she inspired it. Cyrilda, the middle sister, was the blade. She trained from dawn until moonrise, her fingers cracked and bleeding from endless drills with steel and shield. She believed the only law was strength, and that peace must be hammered into existence with discipline. Her warriors were the first to march, and the last to fall. And Lysandra, the eldest, she was the silence between snowflakes. While her sisters danced at solstice feasts, Lysandra walked the outer tundras, listening to things no one else dared to hear. She studied ancient runes carved into glacial cliffs, spent days meditating in the shadow of frozen temples, and whispered with frost spirits only she could see. The people called them the 3 crowns, though no metal circled their brows. Instead, they wore mantles of fur and carved bone, braided hair tied with snowhawk feathers, and necklaces made from the teeth of beasts long extinct. Together, they brought a new age. The southern tribes swore fealty to Avarosa, hoping her wisdom would bring mercy. The warrior clans joined Cyrilda's legions, respecting her iron rule and promise of victory. And those who feared the growing storms, those who felt the ice in their dreams, followed Lysandra. They did not always agree. Their councils were long, filled with bitter words and sharp glances. But the land was too wild, the threats too old for division. And so they stood, not always hand in hand, but always back to back. Freljord began to flourish. Villages became towns. Hunters became chiefs. The long paths between regions were marked by stone pillars bearing the sigils of all three sisters. Shared rule meant shared purpose, and the long night of war seemed for a while to pass. There is an old saying from the Iceborn: no snowflake falls without purpose. The people believed this unity was no accident, that the sisters were the will of the land, made flesh. But the wind has two voices, one above and one below. Even as the people celebrated harvest rites and drank fermented snow moss wine under silver moons, there were rumors. Strange lights flickering beneath frozen lakes, ice that never melted, even in the warmest caves. Children waking from sleep with bleeding noses and frost-bitten dreams. And Lysandra changed. She spent less time in court. Her eyes grew distant, her words more cryptic. She spoke of visions she could not explain, of voices calling from beneath the deepest glaciers. Her sisters tried to reach her, but Lysandra was always hard to grasp, like mist clinging to the edge of a blade. One night, when the wind howled louder than usual through the bones of old ruins, Lysandra left. She took only her closest followers and vanished into the high north. She returned a fortnight later. Her breath was calm, her robes stiff with rime, her eyes different. And though she said little, the seed had been planted. The ice was changing, and soon, so would everything else. Chapter 2. The Old Gods Stir. Before the sisters, before the watchers, before even the first blood spilled upon the snow, there were the old gods. They were not gods in the way southerners speak of gold-clad beings watching from distant heavens. Number. The old gods of Freljord were creatures of storm and stone, wind and wildfire. They did not rule the world. They were the world. There was Orn, the Forge Father, who lived within the deepest furnace of the mountains. It was said he crafted the bones of the world from molten memory, and with his hammer he struck not metal, but fate. When the glaciers groaned under their own weight, the Iceborn said it was Orn shifting in his sleep. There was Anivia, the winged protector, half spirit, half blizzard, who died each winter and was reborn with the spring melt. She flew over the tundras as a shimmer of blue-white light, her wings trailing snow behind her. Hunters whispered her name before each kill, praying she would guide their arrows true. And then there was Volibear, not a god, but a force, rage given fur and claw. He was storm and wrath and untamed destruction. His footprints cracked ice and scorched the earth beneath. Tribes that worshipped him painted their faces with ash and blood and danced in lightning storms, daring him to descend. These beings were not myths, they were real, and they walked among mortals in the days before names. In the time of the sisters, the gods had grown quieter, but they were not gone. Shrines still burned in hidden caves. Bone totems still lined the oldest roads. And in dreams, sometimes, they spoke. It was said that Cyrilda once challenged Orn to forge her a blade that could cut winter itself. He refused. So she climbed his mountain and laid an offering of her own blood at his anvil. 3 days later, she returned with a sword etched in fire, its name too dangerous to speak aloud. Avarosa, too, sought the gods, but not their power. She communed with Anivia in dreams, saw herself reborn over and over, each time more radiant, more compassionate. She took these visions not as prophecy, but as reminders, to endure, was to change. But Lysandra walked farther. She wandered past the lands where Volibear's storm struck trees into ash. She followed the auroras into places no map dared name. There, in the silence beneath the aurora, she found something else. Not God, not beast, not of this world at all. They came to her in sleep, voices like cracking ice and endless falling, visions of cities without sun, creatures made of forgetting, and a world where warmth was heresy. She awoke weeping and freezing and burning all at once. The Watchers. She did not understand them, not at first, but she knew. They were not of the Freljord, not like Orn, not like Anivia. They were deeper, older, hungrier, and they had chosen her. She returned from her journeys bearing gifts, crystals that pulsed with a dark inner glow, symbols that twisted the eyes when read too long, frost that never melted even in fire. She told her sisters the gods were awakening. She did not say which ones. Avarosa embraced her in tears, thinking her shaken. Cyrilda stood in silence, hand on sword hilt. Neither could see what Lysandra now carried in her mind. She began to write in secret, not in books, but in ice. Sigils shaped with her breath, spells whispered through snowfall. The Frost Guard was born, a silent order of monks and mages, devoted not to the old gods, but to the truths beneath. And the old gods, feeling her turning, began to stir. Chapter 3. Beneath the Ice. There is a glacier, north of the last mapped fjords, that no one walks willingly. It has no name in the common tongue. The Iceborn call it Auvel Narak, the cold that watches. Even in midsummer, the winds around it scream like living things. Nothing grows there. The sky above is always starless. That is where Lysandra went. She did not go alone. A dozen Frostguard walked with her, once hunters and mages she had drawn into her web of silence. They brought no torches, no food, only their furs, their chants, and a single obsidian blade wrapped in runed cloth. They descended into a fissure carved not by time, but by intention. It did not lead down as a cave should. It spiraled, as if following the bones of something ancient and long dead. Walls of blue-black ice pulsed softly with their own light. The air smelled of copper and ash, and the further they went, the colder it became. They began to hear whispers, not in the air, but in their bones, a language not spoken aloud, but remembered. One of the Frostguard collapsed, his eyes wide with terror, murmuring prayers to Orn through bloody teeth. He did not rise. The others did not stop. At the bottom, they found it. A gate. Not a door, nor a wall, but a curtain of living frost. It shimmered and shifted, revealing glimpses of something vast on the other side. A sunless expanse. Shadows that moved with purpose. Mouths with no faces. Cities made of crystal and pain. The Watchers. They did not speak. But they showed her. They showed her the end of all warmth, a world perfected in silence and stillness, where time would be locked beneath frost forever, where memory, pain, desire, all would vanish in the embrace of the void. And in that moment, Lysandra was offered a place within it, not as a slave, not as prey, but as a herald. She wept, and the tears froze against her skin. She saw herself standing atop a tower of black ice, the world beneath her feet, and the Watchers stirring once more. And she said yes. She returned, changed. She told her sisters nothing. She spoke no word of the gate, but she began the preparations. The Frostguard spread like snowmelt across the north, building temples in secret, recruiting those who dreamed in frost. They whispered of a future beyond suffering, one where no child starved, because hunger itself would be gone. One where no war raged, because desire would freeze. One where even death would end, because nothing would move again. It was not destruction they promised, it was stillness. And beneath the ice, the Watchers waited. Chapter 4. The Great Sundering. The first crack was quiet. It came not with a war horn, but a whisper. In the village of Halvor's Rest, a place of hunters, deep traditioned and bound to Avarosa's line, children stopped waking, one by one. Their breath still fogged the air, their hearts still beat, but their eyes stared open, seeing nothing. The villagers called for shamans, for Cyrilda's soldiers, for anyone. But Lysandra came, wrapped in robes of glimmering frost, her face veiled in blue silk. She walked alone into their hall of stone. She placed her hand upon each child's brow and whispered in a language no one knew. When she left, the children remained, but their eyes were closed. She said nothing of the Watchers, only this: they dream in ice now. Be grateful. That was the first silence. The second came in the form of a missing envoy. A diplomatic band of Avarosan and Winter's Claw had been sent to settle a border dispute over a hot spring, rare, precious, and fiercely contested. Their route was well marked, their messengers regular. They never arrived. When search parties were sent, they found no blood, no bodies, no sign of a fight. Only a long, curling trench in the snow, frozen solid, as though something massive had been dragged through it, leaving no scent, no trace, only cold. That was when Avarosa called for her sisters. They met in a stone circle atop Hrian's Watch, the place where their rule had first been sworn. The air between them was brittle. Avarosa's eyes were red. Cyrilda's jaw clenched. Lysandra stood in the shadow of an ancient pillar, silent. "You know something," Cyrilda said, her voice like thunder behind clouds. "I know many things," Lysandra replied, tracing a line in the frost with her fingertip. Avarosa stepped forward, her hands bare to the wind. "Lysandra, please, whatever is happening, we can still stop it, together." For a moment, the wind died. Even the snow seemed to hesitate, and Lysandra looked at her sisters. She could have told them. She could have fallen to her knees, could have wept and said she had gone too far, that the Watchers were stirring, that something ancient and vast was about to break through the skin of the world. She could have, but she did not. "They will not be stopped," she said, "only welcomed." Then she turned and vanished into the white. That was the third silence. The next day, the Frost Guard struck. Not with armies, but with absence. In towns loyal to Avarosa, the wells froze solid. The herds fled into ravines. Fires would not stay lit. And always, someone would vanish in the night. A hunter, a healer, a child. One tribe turned to the mountains, seeking warmth near Orn's forge spire. They found it buried under black snow. Nothing but twisted stone and bones, all frozen in place, reaching skyward as if begging. Then came the first true blood. A raiding band of Cyrilda's soldiers encountered a caravan of Frostguard acolytes transporting relics southward. They were asked to halt. They did not. No one survived. The snowstorm that followed lasted 6 days. When it cleared, the bodies were still upright, frozen mid-motion, mouths open, weapons half raised. It It was called the Shattering. After that, the sisters no longer sent letters. No messengers crossed the wastes. The truce was dead. Serilda summoned her legions. She had prepared for war her entire life. But this was no mortal enemy. Her soldiers were trained for steel and bone, not illusions, not whispers, not dreams that bled. Avarosa begged her to wait, to find Lysandra, to speak one last time. "She does not speak," Serilda said. "She buries." And so, with a sword forged by Orn's own fire, she began to march. What came next would split the land. What came next would never thaw. Chapter 5. The War of Ice and Blood. The war did not begin with a trumpet or a charge. It began with snow that would not melt and nights that never ended. Serilda's armies marched west beneath banners of iron blue, their shields rimmed with frost, their swords humming with runes gifted by Orn himself. These were the finest warriors Freljord had seen in centuries, born of hardship, tempered by belief. They expected to meet armies. Instead, they met nothing. No enemy stood on the plains beneath Mount Caeldron. No frost mages hurled spears of ice. No war drums echoed from the hills. There was only silence. And then, on the fourth night, the sky split. A rift of pure white opened above them, lightless, soundless. From it poured the first of the iceborne horrors. Not men, not beasts. Shapes of jagged frost, walking in silence, faceless, wordless, tireless. They did not charge. They simply moved, forward, through the soldiers, through steel, through flame, and the soldiers screamed. Serilda stood her ground. With Orn's blade in hand, she struck down creature after creature. Her armor steamed with blood and frost. Her voice held the lines when all else broke. But her warriors were dying. And worse, they were forgetting. Some who survived the battle could no longer speak their names. Others wept at memories they could not explain. A mother's face lost, a song they could almost hear, but never recall. The Watchers were not simply killing, they were erasing. Meanwhile, Avarosa led her people south, seeking refuge in the hidden valleys where Anivia was once worshipped. Her goal was not conquest, but survival. She sent ravens to every tribe still untouched by frost, calling them to shelter. She thought she could escape the war, but the war found her. One night, as her caravan crossed the Yisil Pass, the mountains around them shook. Ice cascaded down the cliffs in waves, not falling, climbing. Walls of jagged frost rose around them, sealing every exit. Then the wind came, but it carried no snow. It carried whispers. Avarosa fell to her knees, clutching her head as the memories of every tribe she'd ever visited poured through her at once. Voices of children, songs of mourning, laughter over shared bread. All of it, flooding, overwhelming, and then stillness. When she rose, the walls of ice were gone. So were dozens of her people. She never spoke of what she saw again. At last, the sisters met. On the plateau of Ilhark's crown, a place once sacred to the old gods, where the sky shimmered with the northern lights, even at noon. Serilda arrived first, her blade glowing faint red. Avarosa followed, draped in a mantle of feathers, her expression unreadable. Lysandra came last. She did not walk. She glided across frost that bloomed beneath her feet. She wore a crown of black ice, her eyes luminous with something no longer human. None of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Avarosa stepped forward. "This doesn't have to end in death." "It never did," Lysandra replied. "That was your mistake." Serilda drew her sword, Lysandra raised a hand, and the earth split. The duel that followed became legend. Serilda charged through a storm of ice daggers, carving through them with fire and fury. She struck at Lysandra again and again, each blow echoing like thunder. But Lysandra was not flesh. She was wind. She was ice. She was the Watcher's will. Avarosa tried to intervene, raising her bow, but Lysandra turned her gaze on her, and for a heartbeat, Avarosa saw a vision of the world as it would become. Still, perfect, painless, dead. She hesitated. That was enough. Serilda struck one final time, a blow meant to cleave Lysandra in two, but her blade froze mid-swing. The fire within it snuffed out. Lysandra stepped forward and whispered something no one heard. Serilda turned to stone, then to ash. Avarosa loosed her arrow. It pierced Lysandra's shoulder, and for the first time in years, the Ice Witch bled. But it was too late. The rift opened, not above, below. From the earth itself came the howl, not of wolves nor wind, but of the Watchers, the real ones, vast, unspeakable, shadows that bent light, ice that devoured warmth. And Lysandra saw. She saw what she had done, what they truly were. Not gods, not saviors. Hunger, she screamed. And then she turned. She betrayed them. She unleashed every ounce of power she had. She called the mountains to collapse. She sealed the chasm with her own blood, her own soul, her own name. She buried the Watchers, but the cost was everything. Chapter 6. Ice Remembers. There are some things the ice never forgets. The rift was sealed. The Watchers, buried beneath miles of stone, frost, and magic, older than the stars. Lysandra's final act, born not of loyalty or love, but horror, closed the wound she had opened. But the world did not celebrate. It mourned. Avarosa was never seen again. Some say she wandered into the tundra, bow in hand, to die alone. Others believe she became one with the land, her spirit dancing in every snowflake that falls. Her followers built cairns in her memory, stone shrines shaped like open hands, left empty. Serilda's name was carved into the black ice that held her ashes. Her warriors took up her sword, not the blade itself, but the will behind it. They called themselves the Winter's Claw and vowed never to kneel again. Strength would be their law. And Lysandra did not die, but something within her did. Her skin became colder than stone, her breath a mist of silence, her voice, once elusive, now like wind over a frozen grave. She erased herself from history, erased her sisters, erased the war. She rewrote the story. She told the world she had saved them. The Frost Guard became her shield and her mouth. They wandered the land as monks and mystics, speaking of the Ice Witch who had defeated the darkness beyond, who kept the world safe through sacrifice. But they never spoke of what was buried below. The howling abyss, once a valley of spirits and auroras, became a scar, a pit too deep to measure. At its heart stood a fortress carved of dark ice, its halls silent, its torches unlit, and beneath it, silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence of waiting. Lysandra lives still, immortal, untouched by time. She walks the frozen paths of the north, her face hidden beneath veils of mist. Some say she speaks only to the wind now. Others believe she hears the Watchers in her dreams. She built a kingdom of frost, but not for power, for fear. Every spell she casts, every ritual, every shrine and secret and slaughter, all meant to keep them sleeping, to keep them sealed. For Lysandra knows what even her most loyal followers do not. She did not win. She bought time. The Watchers still stir beneath the ice, not dead, not dreaming, waiting. And the ice, the true ice, remembers every step, every lie, every name. It whispers in the wind, in the cracking of glaciers, in the silence between snowfalls. One day, it says, the seal will break. And when it does, no flame will be warm enough. No God will be strong enough. No memory will be clear enough to save us. Only ice, and what sleeps beneath it. Some stories are not told to remember. They are told to warn. The frost that lies over Freljord is more than weather. It is memory. It is punishment. It is a silence too old to speak and too deep to thaw. The tribes still live, though divided. The Avarosans follow Ash, a descendant perhaps, or merely a believer, and speak of unity, though they carry bows of war. The Winter's Claw march behind Sejuani, who honors Serilda's fury, forging strength in blood and pain. And the Frost Guard, they watch, always, from behind frozen masks and mirrored eyes. Lysandra walks among them, veiled, still. Her steps leave no sound, yet the wind shifts where she passes. She smiles like someone who once believed in something. The howling abyss remains sealed, but none linger near it. Even the bravest hunters grow quiet at its edge, for they say the ice hums just beneath hearing, just beneath waking. And in the coldest winters, when the wind howls through empty valleys, children whisper stories by firelight, stories of three sisters, of gods who forged and broke the world, of things beneath the ice. They say the Watchers sleep, but the ice never does. Thank you for joining me by the fire tonight. You've walked across a land of silence and memory. You've met warriors and witches, gods and monsters. You've stood beside three sisters as they rose, and watched as they were scattered like snowflakes across the wind. And now the story sleeps. But I wonder, which part will linger with you? Was it Serilda's final stand? Avarosa's quiet mercy? Or Lysandra's terrible bargain? Do you believe the Watchers are truly gone? Or are they simply waiting? Let these thoughts fade as your breath slows. Let your mind settle like snow. The fire burns low now, but its warmth is with you. And when you dream tonight, may the wind be gentle, and may the ice stay far away. Good night, traveler, until the next story.